Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Ninen. Thank you for joining us. Reaction is pouring in today after Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee released their controversial memo on the Russia investigation. The 4-page document raises concerns about information that was included to obtain a FISA warrant authorizing surveillance of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page during the 2016 election. The document was released today despite pushback from Democrats. The FBI also warned against the move, citing grave concerns that the memo cherry-picked information, impacting its accuracy. But President Trump dismissed those concerns. Here's what he had to say after declassifying the document this morning.
I think it's terrible. You want to know the truth? I think it's a disgrace. What's going on in this country, I think it's a disgrace. The memo was sent to Congress. It was declassified. Congress will do whatever they're going to do. But I think it's a disgrace what's happening in our country. And when you look at that and you see that and so many other things, what's going on, a lot of people should be ashamed of themselves, and much worse than that.
Earlier, my colleagues Anne-Marie Green and Vladimir Duthier spoke to CBS News Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues, who's reading through the document.
The Russia investigation began in late July of 2016, and in part because you had the release of this stolen Democratic National Committee data and emails. And so at the time, the White House was trying to figure out, well, what is happening and what is the goal of this Russian operation? You had the CIA director at the time, John Brennan, who had warned the White House, also encouraged the FBI to begin this investigation because intelligence had picked up these contacts, they say, between Trump campaign officials and Russian operatives. And so you're right, Vlad, at that time, the FBI had just wrapped up with that statement on July 5th. Director Comey at the time had in essence, closed the Clinton investigation. But what was starting up at that same point was the Russia investigation, and they did not talk about that. But the FBI will tell you that they do not talk about ongoing investigations, which is why they made that distinction between essentially shutting down the Clinton investigation in July while this Russia investigation was growing more intense and more serious. So those are really separate issues at this point, because what was happening at that time, investigators were trying to get a handle on it, because you had all of this damaging information affecting the campaign at that time, and investigators were trying to figure out why, who was behind it, were there any contacts with Russian operatives. And what they were finding, for example, was Carter Page. And Carter Page, who at the time was a relatively unknown foreign policy advisor, but he had latched onto the Trump campaign. But investigators with the FBI, they had a history with Carter Page, because in 2013 he showed up in a separate investigation into Russian spies here in the U.S. The FBI had secret recordings of his interactions with these Russian operatives, or rather these Russian operatives discussing their interactions with Carter Page and trying to recruit him. So he had a history with law enforcement in this country, with the FBI specifically, and counterintelligence in this country specifically. And so when he became part of the Trump campaign, it obviously, for investigators, it raised some alarms. And then, you look down the line in October of 2016, investigators are trying to dig deeper into this. And that's when they opened up this FISA warrant on Carter Page. Now, this Republican memo, again, drafted by staffers, authorized by Republican Congressman Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, it is trying to cast doubt on the premise of this investigation, that it was launched in part because of this dossier, which at the time was unsubstantiated information. Some of that has changed. Obviously, over time, investigators have corroborated some of that information, but at the time, according to this memo, the information in the dossier was unreliable. It was unsubstantiated, and you're targeting this American citizen, Carter Page, and what the memo is saying is that is a problem that Americans should be concerned about.